Tonight on the Roundtable.
There's always a way to do what you want to do. You just have to figure it out, and that figuring it out is part of the fun of playing.
Matthew Colville, who has decades of experience in writing both video and tabletop games.
I stare at you, Nutcracker, and I say, "Fie upon your soul," as I slap you across the face.
Ivan Van Norman, a tabletop and RPG game designer who wrestles with the sprawling narrative of Foreververse.
I am excited when my players are excited.
Yeah.
When they do something, I'm sitting there and I'm just like, oh yeah!
And Jasmine Bhullar, host of the innovative RPG show, The Outcrowd.
Perfect, because it's not the no but, it's not the yes and, it's the yes but.
I have a composition notebook with Lisa Frank stickers all over it.
That's
Nice.
amazing.
And it says GM's rule on it
I have a,
in Sharpie.
it's beautiful.
That's high tech.
Index cards.
Always
and
professional.
I love my index cards, one for passing notes, and two, just because I basically make myself, you are amazing, thank you. I make all my notes and kind of like stack them up so that when after the show's done, I just take them, I just absorb them all. And,
What was our subject?
I
It
think
was
we were
about game mechanics and how they shape the story and vice versa.
Are they a means to an end? Or
Yes.
are they a process that allows you to, like, I don't know, further the storytelling? Do you have opinions on that, either of you?
My favorite parts about roleplay and role-playing games is the stories and the interactions. And I'm one of those GMs that if you sell it to me, I won't make you roll for it.
Right.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, we did that with 7th Sea recently.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I love 7th Sea is that it rewards flamboyant storytelling. And it does it in the mechanics. It gives you bonus dice. Sometimes you'll even earn what they call their kind of bennies or their hero points.
Yeah.
If you sell it, then go for it.
Yeah, and
So-
with our system that we used over at Hyper, you could also get plot points, and you could literally spend them like plot point and become the GM
Oh, sure.
for a moment.
I remember, this is going to be an obscure reference, there was a game called Torg
I know
from
Torg.
West End Games. And
Yeah.
Torg, it's a crazy game, it's not important what it's about, but it got a lot of juice when it came out because there were cards, and players could get a card that allowed them to tell the GM, no, that's not what happens.
Right.
Yes.
But having a game
Right.
mechanic that gives the players, but the players, see, the thing a mechanic like that does is it lets the players know this is possible.
Right.
They didn't know it was possible before until they saw the mechanic.
Yeah.
And as a good DM, you always want to be able to say, no, you don't even roll, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
I was gonna
But
say.
knowing that the players go, wait, I can take over, that
Right.
gives them power that they didn't realize they had before.
And not only just take over, but like stop asking and start telling.
Yeah.
Like,
Can I do this? Can I do this?
Yes.
Why are you asking me?
Go. Like,
Exactly.
you tell
Exactly.
me
Yeah, why are you asking
like
me?
what the glory that you're going to provide to this story is in the game.
They made a game in the 90s called the Baron Munchhausen Rpg.
Baron
Which is
Munchausen.
very like
That was
kind
a
of
great
like,
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they made an RPG. I mean, Baron Munchausen is a German folk
Right.
character. Is it even really an RPG? I don't know.
Right.
It's more like those
It's a
one-page
pass the ball
thing. Yeah, it's a
storytelling,
storytelling game
you
where
know.
somebody will say to you, Baron, how did you get out when the Queen of the
love
Moon
that.
had you captured and was going to cut your head out? How did you get out of that?
Yeah.
And this is the first time you've ever heard of that, and now you have to explain to us how Baron Munchausen made it out
Baron
of that.
Munchausen is amazing because it's a pub tale.
Yeah.
It's a pub tale
Yeah, it's like a drinking
that
game
you all
almost.
tell each
Yeah.
other.
That sounds
And you
awesome.
just carry the story with you. That's where mechanics in a weird way, because there's basically no mechanics.
Correct, yeah.
And it is a Dread's like that. It's a glorified ghost story. The rules are just a tool for tension. And that
Okay,
tower.
yeah.
Have you know about
No.
Dread? You're basically telling a ghost story.
Okay.
You take a Jenga tower, which
Okay.
they call the Tower of Doom, and as each
Oh, I
player
get it.
does things, instead of rolling the dice, they pull from the tower.
Right.
And if at any time the player is pulling from the tower and the tower falls, that character either goes insane, they're
Right.
dead, they're just out of the game. And then you stack the tower back up, you pull blocks, and
So
then
the
you
towers
keep
is
going.
purely a metaphor
Yes.
for the tension in the story.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
It's
fantastic.
amazing.
Beautiful.
Have you ever felt like more structure is sometimes good for newer RPers? Because sometimes you throw them in this playground, and they sit there and they'll
they have
stare
no idea
at
what
you
to
like,
do.
how do, because they don't know what to do. They're like, well, I don't know what my tools are. In my brain, I'm like, everything here is your tool, and you can use anything
Right.
in this beautiful playground.
I guess that kind of gets into the more you prep and the more you and I hate using that term railroad because it's such a dirty word in the
I
DM
think that
world.
I think that there are some negative connotations with railroading, but I think that is the best way to get people into Dungeons and Dragons, in my opinion, into pen and paper. I've gotten people playing it, and it's like, I call it my gateway drug with Mice and Mystics. That is essentially a D&D campaign, right? You're reading from a book, except there is no GM. And it's the easiest way to fool people who are like, oh, I'd never play that pen and paper stuff, into playing it
because of their
from
good
Mice and
experience.
Mystics. Because they're like, I love this. This is great. There's more to this?
Right.
And it's like, there's this game called Mouse Guard.
Oh, yeah.
You may or may not be able to play a mouse with like an acorn shield. How adorable is that?
I ended up being, I found myself in the position of being like a 4th edition D&D evangelist, because I'm one of the few people that liked it. And so that surprises people. But one of the things I noticed was that when you make a character in 4th edition, the first thing that happens is you get a bunch of powers. And that meant, I've introduced dozens of people to D&D, hundreds probably now. And it was a huge difference between normal everyday, any RPG, where you're like, I don't really know what I can do. What are my options?
Well,
and 4th edition's like, here are your options.
Here are your options.
Right? And that made it empowered the players early on.
Yeah.
But then the other thing I noticed going forward was it also ended up with many situations where the players felt like, if this doesn't solve the problem, then they got frustrated.
Right.
I always loved 3.5.
3.5. Well, it was in a weird way. That one was the opposite of how 4th did it. It was a sandbox. It gave you so many different choices, and it just the ability to kind of get into it, which is why one people loved it, because all the mechanics of D&D. And I mean mechanics like people who like to go into the engine and like play with everything and engineer it.
Break it.
That was what they loved.
When I was running 3.5, I took this stuff super seriously, and I would spend like an hour and a half with a chart figuring out, okay, you weren't there for this adventure, and you don't get that XP. This is divided by 5.
You're like an accountant.
And I didn't even think about it. Didn't even at the time, that just seemed like that was perfectly reasonable. Yeah. And it was an incredibly intense mathematical experience.
That actually soured my first experience ever with pen and paper.
Was the math?
Really?
I had an ex who played. Obviously now he's an ex, and I'll tell you why. I decided I'm going to play Dungeons and Dragons. And at the time I'd been playing World of Warcraft, and I was like, this is it. And I purchased the books. It was the Book of Vile Darkness.
Oh yeah.
And this was my edgy phase, so I was like,
Darkness.
Cancer Mage. That is me. I'm gonna be a Cancer Mage.
Yeah.
And I go, and this is like your stereotypical, like, they meet once a month and they play for like 10 hours.
Oh, wow.
Like,
Okay,
yeah, like that. This is one of
Marathon
those groups.
gaming, yeah.
And I get in, I'm so excited. I've painted my miniature and I figured out the game. And immediately they're like, well, you're chaotic evil, so you can't really roll with us. And I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah, you can't play with us. I'm like, a bunch of greasy nerds. I immediately turned it into like a sex thing. I'm like, it's because I'm a girl and this is your little boys club, and I got really upset about it. I may have flipped a table.
But the funny thing is, they weren't coming at you on a gender issue. They were coming at you because you were a Cancer Mage.
Yeah.
Right? They were like, well, you must be evil. You must be evil.
You should have taken all that hate as like a Cancer Mage and like turned it into like the characters.
Well,
like,
they were higher level than me, and everything had to be by the rules. And as a GM now, I'm just gonna say this. If a little brown girl walked into my basement like, I'm excited to play D&D, I would never be like, we're gonna kill you because you're only level 1 and you're evil.
Because what you want is more people to play.
Yes.
Right? If someone's interested in playing, like back, I came up when I started, this is like 1985, like there was not yet this stigma of, everyone I knew was playing in high school, like cool people were playing, because it was still a relatively new thing. And if someone said, what is that you're doing? You wouldn't try to explain it to them. You would just say, here's a character sheet, sit down and play.
Right.
Yeah.
I would have just like explored why you wanted to play the Cancer Mage, explored like the concept of who you wanted to do into it, and try to incorporate that. And if the character needed to be like 4 levels higher for you to be able to play in the group, even if it's just for that one session, well then, fuck it. Like,
right?
Just make him 4 levels higher.
Yeah, in
like,
hindsight,
who cares?
it wasn't a great character. I was basically like a bootleg Catwoman who had been resuscitated by plague rats.
I'm curious, so you get the Book of Vile Darkness. Were you thinking, well, this is what D&D is?
Yeah.
Was there a culture clash when you discovered, oh wait, this is just this one kind of like offshoot over here in the corner?
Yeah, I was really disappointed.
Right, because if you're like, this is awesome, and then you find out, really it's like knights and Gandalf and stuff like that.
The first session I went to, I was really disappointed. I'm not gonna lie, if you guys wanna hear about this train wreck, let me tell you. So I decided, I'm gonna play D&D, and I went to the store and I got like I don't even think I picked up a player's handbook. I'm pretty sure I just Googled how to play. So I grabbed the Book of Vile Darkness, I make my character, I head over, and there's like a dude wearing a barbarian hat with horns, and they're all like, you know, by Thor, and I'm like, oh God, like what is this crap? I was so upset.
Well, it's interesting. If we're talking about how game mechanics influence storytelling, that is 100% that. Like you had this one example, magic items from the Book of Vile Darkness, and all these crazy prestige classes, and that 100% colored your notion of who not only your character was. In other words, these weren't options. This was it. Also, what the game could be. And when you walk in, you're like, okay, well, this is actually a lot less interesting.
They were boring.
Sure, yeah.
And that's
that's
often
why they tried to kill me, because they're boring people. Screw those guys.
Yeah, I can feel all the shade.
Yeah, look, I get to hang out with these awesome people now, and they're probably still eating Cheetos.
It is always often about the people that you play with. Now, to be fair, they have their own process, and we were just talking about safe spaces too. Like a table's always a safe space, even if they were not kind to you. Okay.
Ivan, you're so much of a better person than I am.
I don't know. I've just seen a lot of people who've been burnt from in a similar way to what you put up with, and probably what you've encountered a whole lot.
No, I mean, look, we're lucky that we're in a position now where I feel like this is the beginning of the turning of the tide.
Right.
Where for the past 40 years, more people were bouncing off of D&D than playing it exactly because of the experiences. But now, I think more people understand if they end up at a table like that, they're like, well, this is stupid. I know there are better tables out there than this.
Yes.
I know there are
better tables out there, and that's the joy of like the fact that we're now in a place where there's more options. Is that if you don't like what's here, there is someone out there, no matter what you want to do, who is totally in with your jam and is going to celebrate you for what you bring to the table and wants to incorporate you. Even if it's not right in front of you, it is out there. You just need to be patient and go and find it.
Yeah, and don't make the mistake of thinking these people are the game.
Do you think that because of the advent of all of these RPG shows, that people feel pressured that their first campaign has to be perfect because they're watching these shows that are so great?
You know, no one watches Titanic and then grabs a video camera and it's like, I'm gonna make Titanic, you know, and kind of go crazy. Or nobody goes to like the Louvre and sees a sculpture and then picks up a marble and it's like, I'm gonna do David. But anyone can play a role-playing game.
Sure. I've got a lot of people commenting on my YouTube videos saying I watched Critical Role and thought I could never do that. Of course you would. Of course you would think that. If you watch Critical Role, you're going to think, holy crap, D&D is this thing.
Unobtainable.
Right, yeah, exactly. And that's why eventually, and I told people in the videos, I said, eventually I will stream one of my games and you will see that I am just like you. We're just a bunch of bumbling idiots. We're just a bunch of nerds that are going to play.
Just toddle through it.
Yeah, and we streamed and people were like, holy crap, you and your friends are just like me and my friends. I can do this. And like, absolutely you can.
One of my favorite experiences is when we were running the Pugmire game and it was still in beta. The roles weren't even done, dude. Like, game's not even finished. But we did a stream of generating NPCs, and like it was just a spreadsheet, and it was just like a crowdsourcing medium in which I felt like everybody got to feel like they had a hand in the creative process and they got to make something.
And mine is more about showing you what's going on behind the scenes. And it really started to frustrate me when the people in chat, at first, they would see my notes and they would watch and you could see them talking about, did you see what he just did? This person said this and he completely flipped it around. He had his notes written this way and he threw all that out and made something up. And then when it got to people,
what happens.
yeah, but I was like, oh, this is great. I'm glad we're doing this. But then it got to the point where people were watching for the story. They weren't seeing the behind the scenes anymore. And that's one of the reasons we stopped.
It's weird.
But that notion of like seeing what the DM is doing behind the screens.
There's so many other role-playing opportunities out there, and every week there's something like in a couple weeks, we're playing a game called Puppet Land. It's a craft-made world in which everybody is puppets in a puppet land, and there was a human who was the maker. And it's funny because that game is very much, it gives you a story in which to kind of work with, but tying it back to our topic, the mechanics are very much centered around you have to tell it like you're telling a story. Sir Francis with the elaborate bow tie walked into the room and saw the Nutcracker sitting upon the table. And that's what the DM would say, but then the Nutcracker character would go, I stare at you, Nutcracker, and I say, fie upon your soul, as I slap you across the face. And instead of doing the I statement, it is the third person statement. So everyone's telling it like it's a single narrative. So it's a little bit like that pass the ball narrative.
Cool.
And it's wonderful because you're essentially all telling a story together.
Were you your first DM?
I was my first DM.
Had someone run for you?
No, no one
you're
ran
like,
for
I
me.
need to.
I was
No
my
one's
first DM.
Yeah.
I left such a bad impression on my first players, or in my first game, that like I think about that game so often.
You feel bad.
now.
You still feel bad.
I still feel bad.
Wake up in a cold sweat, like, no, those children probably hate D&D now.
I did. I just, it didn't completely ruin it for some. Thank God.
I feel like when I first started playing D&D, there was this feeling of it's the DM versus the players.
Oh, sure.
Sure.
That's a classic
That's
style.
a classic,
The
yeah.
adversarial style
All
of
of
play.
my, I think my first 6 games, it felt like he was trying to kill us, or he was
Right.
moving against us, or he wanted to tell his story, kind of like
Right.
what you were saying, and we were trying to tell our stories.
Right.
And one thing that I feel like Open Legend tackles right in its GM guide is like, don't freaking kill your players.
Yeah.
Try to work with your
With your
players.
players.
Have a
Right.
childlike
They're on your side.
excitement. I am excited when my players are excited.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
When they do something, I'm sitting there and I'm just like, oh yeah, like, and I'm just as excited as they are. And
Yeah.
I always tell my audience, I'm like, if you don't feel that way, you really got to recenter and decide how you're gonna
And what's
GM,
important
because
to
you
you.
should be
Yeah.
excited just like they are.
It's that going back to that old improv style of thinking. It's not a no, it's a yes and.
Yeah.
It's not a no, but it's a yes and.
Yeah.
And there's always limits, and you should always put limits, because without conflict, there's no reward, right? And I think that's another beautiful thing that good DMs do, is they balance that like conflict versus just like giving the players anything they want. Like there's a difference between doing that, because you can go too far. If you give the players everything they want, then they don't feel challenged. It's kind of like they're just walking through the
Sometimes you have to be
situations.
mean.
There's always a way to do what you want to do. You just have to figure it out, and that figuring it out is part of the fun of playing. So if your players have ambition, if they're trying to get things done, you don't just say no because that's not how your character works, or no because there's no rule that supports that.
Right.
It's like, no, there's a way to do it, but it may
Yes.
require you having to jump through some other, sacrifice.
Sacrifice is the big one.
Yeah, because for me,
Because you want to run a
big-
game on that table.
Well, I realized that the juice for me was when my players would take this magic item that they had randomly gotten, and they're like, well, I guess I'll take that thing. That's not what I wanted, and I was like, look, that's what the table said you get. And then later on, when they take it and come up with some incredibly inventive use for this that gets them out of a jam, and I'm like, I guarantee you, no one who has ever played D&D has ever used that item to do that
way.
thing. You're unique. This is a unique experience.
Right.
And that, to me, had a big impact on the kind of game I run,
That's
just trying to
cool.
emulate that.
So we talked a lot about story light kind of systems.
Sure.
Have you ever had a gameplay experience in which like the mechanics or the rules actually made the game better
Yes.
for you?
Yes. 100%.
Great.
And one of them was Vanquished.
Okay.
Having the queue system and the plot point system, there was never a moment where if I had a plot point, I had to worry about failing a skill check on something I thought I should pass.
Got it.
I played a technomancer, so she could like manipulate technology, and you know how like necromancers like stitch dead bodies together and create
Right, you
golems.
put
I would
technology
stitch
together
technology
and
together
make it
and
do crazy
create,
things.
and control it with my mind. And what was great about that system is if there was a moment where I'm going to pull like a Hank Pym or a Tony Stark moment, I could like spend a plot point and just be
sure.
like, I'm now the GM, and so this is what's gonna happen. I'm gonna do a backflip off the table.
And you're just gonna cut through the bullshit and get straight to the point.
And I never had to
Yeah.
worry about like rolling that fail. And there's times as a GM where you'll see somebody, they'll like describe something really cool, and then they'll roll for it, and they'll roll a 3, and you're like,
Yeah, that was an amazing idea. I wish it had worked.
I feel like that
Maybe
should
this-
have worked.
Yes, yeah.
That really should have worked.
Yeah.
But you only
instead-
rolled a 3.
Yeah.
There was a game called Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay.
Yeah.
Okay,
It was
yeah,
like
yeah.
there are many different
I
editions of it, but it's basically
yeah.
I think the same system they use for Star Wars now. And
It's similar, and also Dark Heresy.
I loved the die mechanic because it encouraged me to run the kind of game I would not have run otherwise, which was
Right.
a much more pulp fiction Indiana Jones out of the frying pan into the fire, because
Right.
it's like you roll a dice, it's like, yes, you succeeded, but something horrible happens.
Yeah. Something horrible
Yes, you have
happens.
successfully
Yes.
jumped from one of these two coaches to the other one while they're barreling down the street, but now you're hanging by your fingernails.
That's why
And that
yeah.
reversal of like, yes, that happened, but now you're in a worse place.
Yes, but.
Yeah.
It's perfect because it's not the no but, it's not the yes and, it's the yes but.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like it
Which
was
is
good
always
news.
fun.
I like
Which is
that
always
die
fun.
mechanic of the good news, bad news thing.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
always made
Degrees
the
of
players
success
feel
and
like they were
degree.
making progress.
Yeah.
And it also made me feel like I was creating tension. And I was like,
Yeah.
I would not have done this
So-
if it wasn't for these dice dice and this dice mechanic.
I agree 100%. Edge of the Empire I sometimes can be a little crunchy, but then you have these great moments come out of it, and it's worth it.
So what games are you folks intending to run next?
I would love to do a campaign set in like the Mahabharata, because I feel like Indian mythology isn't explored a lot. I feel like anything outside of like European mythology isn't explored a lot. There's a lot of cool like Chinese and Japanese mythologies out there with huge pantheon of gods that are like crazy out of this world,
And
right?
very,
Great
like,
stories.
bitter.
Great stories behind
great
them.
sagas,
Yeah.
just like awesome stuff.
That's cool. How about you?
I want to do a game where I pick 3 players, where I get together with that player individually, and we're going to play from 1st to 3rd or 5th level, just you and me, and you are some kind of regent. You are somebody who is a duke or a king or a wizard that controls this, and then on another night of the week, you and I playing, and the 3 players are in the same world, and they're dealing with other NPCs, and you don't realize that the wizard that you're talking to is her. Right, and then
You want to build backstories that are like
so that
several
you,
episodes
by the time
across.
we all get together,
Yeah.
there'll be 2 or 3 or 4 players who aren't part of that. They're just normal players in a D&D game, but
That's
these
really
other
cool.
players have, not only have I played through my backstory, but I have a position in this world. I have responsibility.
You've done several sessions with each one of these players.
Yeah.
That like link them together.
Yeah.
And they didn't even know, because then you're basically building up to one beautiful giant moment
Yeah.
where it's like I actually
I love that Guy Ritchie style of like,
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
I live for stuff like that.
So I want to run 10 Candles. 10 Candles is essentially a system that has a physical representation of the story in the form of 10 candles.
Right.
And what you do is the scenario is always you are the last person of a blank. And the idea is that during each plot point, you snuff out a candle. The idea being that the very last candle is snuffed out, and the idea being that you're basically going through, and maybe you have people with you, and they're getting snuffed out as you're through, but you're going through this terrible alien situation. Did you ever play Prey?
Oh, the
I've
video
heard of
game.
the
I
video
played
game,
it.
yeah.
The video game Prey. So the odds are all around them. They're basically just escaping capture and moving through, and then that final one, and it's like there's still hope. I would love to end on hope.
Some of the best stories are told that way.
Oh,
like,
sure,
like
yeah.
Rogue One or even Halo
Yeah,
Reach.
yes.
You know
Yeah.
how
You
Halo
know
Reach
how
is
it
going to
ends
end
live,
because
yeah.
you know where Halo 1 starts.
I mean, Titanic. You know how Titanic's going to end.
You
but
know
we
how it's gonna end.
It
You still
if
wanna
you're
enjoy the
good-
story.
And if
The
you're
journey.
if it's going well, you know it's going well because the players have forgotten. Oh, that's right. Everything ends.
And that's
Like,
our
right.
jobs as a GM to make sure that we make the journey interesting. Because
Yes.
does the end result ever really matter? It's the journey.
Yeah, sure.
That's
The
what
journey,
you hold
the journey is
close.
the
And
destination.
I love that, like it's like fighting fate versus like ending on like a smidgen of hope versus the
Right.
death of a civilization.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
3 totally different approaches that
Yeah.
are all wonderful stories that I would subscribe to at any time.